Well, I think today was a very significant day. Today, the House of Representatives announced they're formally opening an impeachment inquiry into Joe Biden. I think that's exactly the right thing for them to do. I've been calling on the House to do this for many months now. And you know, one of the interesting ways to assess what's going on is to look at the Biden White House's shifting stories. And you played quite a bit of this in your monologue. Started off with Joe Biden saying, I've never talked with my son about any of his overseas business dealings. Turns out that was a lie. Their next story was, I've never done business with my son and his overseas business dealings. Turns out that was a lie. You know, the latest talking points Democrats are trying to trot out in response to this impeachment inquiry is there is no direct evidence of Joe's involvement in the corruption. So they've pretty much given up on Hunter. Yeah, Hunter's corrupt as the day is long, but there's no direct evidence of Joe's involvement. That's what they're saying. Now, that's a flat-out lie, too.
Well, it looks like Ted Cruz is right again. The White House has completely changed position from there's no evidence to there's no hard evidence to there's no evidence again. And remember, these are all the people that would tell you that the Hunter Biden laptop was fake before they told you it was real. They still can't tell you who the big guy was, but they do know there is no evidence, and the media will report that there's no evidence, and they have to tell you over and over, there's no evidence, ignore all the evidence because there is no evidence, and that's a branding technique. It's not a truth-telling moment for the White House, but understand this, the media is going to go all in on this. They're going to buy right in. They're going to repeat every single thing the White House tells them to repeat. Just watch.
Exactly what he said. I mean, this is something that Donald Trump has been talking about since July.
So he's getting millions of dollars illegally from China. And then you say, hey, they impeached me over a phone call that was perfect. Why aren't they impeaching Biden for receiving tens of millions of dollars? Why isn't he under impeachment?
Obviously, no evidence about the millions of dollars from China, but
there actually is. There's bank accounts, and there's wire transfers, and there's all sorts of other things going on from China with millions of dollars going to the Biden family. So you can pretend all you want that there's no evidence, but once again, there's plenty of evidence. You just don't like what it says. And you're saying it just involves Hunter Biden, not Joe Biden, which before it was Hunter Biden did nothing wrong. And you may remember there was a phone call of Joe Biden telling his son that he dealt with the Washington Post, and he's clear. So, again, we have evidence that Joe Biden's interfering in this, both with the media and with foreign governments. We all know that, so why you continue to say there's no evidence? We know there's evidence. But that's the line the White House tells them they must use. So Kaitlan Collins transitioned from a reporter at the Daily Wire, a conservative person, to whatever she is now. And listen to what she's saying. No evidence because the White House tells them to say no evidence.
Is it clear that Trump is a major driving force in this to you?
He is certainly somebody who supports it, is behind it, has been talking about it, as you see in those clips, has been talking about it behind the scenes. How aggressively he is pushing for it with McCarthy directly, I think, is an open question. But there's no doubt that Trump, and this is his style, he sort of drops something into the conversation and Republicans take it up. And it's often offered as some kind of a suggestion. It's not a surprise that it went this route. I do think it's true, though, that McCarthy's about face was striking in terms of requiring a vote to move ahead.
Why do you think so?
Because I think that it speaks to the fact that his members are getting very restless, and he sees a real concern for himself from his right flank. And he is very good at reading the room in that way, and he sees where danger is coming from, and he acted. Now, I don't think that anyone else has enough votes to win the speakership right now against him, but I do think it speaks to what everybody thought was going to happen when he became speaker, which is that he is going to be sort of beholden to a certain group of right-wing Congress members.
Yeah.
So he has to react to his constituency. So that's what you're saying? So Biden shouldn't react to his constituency, and Trump shouldn't react to his constituency, and McCarthy shouldn't react to his constituency, right? That's what you say? Oh, no, you never say that kind of stuff. Only here. He's just being a little bitch to Matt Gaetz. That's the argument we want to make? No, also, Trump is driving all of this. Of course, that's what the media has crammed in there. So now they're saying that as well. And now it's time to push that line that Donald Trump did this. They're just doing what Donald Trump wants. I can't tell you the number of people who've come to me on social media saying just that.
Yeah, and for some of them, an inquiry is not even enough. They want to move full steam ahead with a full impeachment of President Biden.
Well, and it's important to note, Caitlin, that, look, to Congressman Goldman's point, we don't know, there's no evidence so far that ties Joe Biden to any of this, at least nothing that they have brought forward and that we have seen. Now, they're suggesting that could change if they move ahead. Something else that could change if they move ahead is this could benefit President Biden. This could end up having ramifications for Republicans if voters who don't really want to see these kinds of inquiries all the time feel like this is going too far. And I think what you heard from the congressman just now, what he was talking about real work that has to get done, that's what you're going to hear Democrats talk about over and over and over again.
Yeah, and what does an impeachment inquiry even look like if the government is shut down is another question. McCarthy went out of his way today to say this is only an impeachment inquiry. Obviously, that's likely to make moderate Republicans feel better about this who are in districts that President Biden won. But President Trump as well as I do, former President Trump, an impeachment inquiry is not going to be sufficient to a former president who was impeached twice, is it?
I don't think so, although it's important to remember that he's also been very focused on getting his own impeachment record expunged. That's been something he's been talking about a lot, too. We will see which one is more important to him. But I do think, to your point, as we have seen former President Trump face more pressure from these criminal inquiries, he has ratcheted up the talk about impeaching Biden. And it will be surprising if he feels content stopping at we're just asking questions.
Yeah, it seems to be a hope that it would muddy the waters here. Right. We have seen some moderate Republicans say they're kind of fine with this. They're surprisingly on board, a few of the moderates here in New York. Senate Republicans, though, have been either outright dismissive or deeply skeptical of this. Senator McConnell, how do Senate Republicans handle this, do you expect?
I think it's a great question, and I think we're going to see in the coming days. But you are correct that a lot of them have expressed skepticism about these efforts so far, not just on impeachment generally, but on where this is all heading in terms of the evidence. Now, could something happen that changes that? Absolutely, but we'll see.
Yeah. But Kaitlan Collins echoed the no evidence stuff again and again and again and again. But what happens when someone actually brings evidence to the table with Kaitlan Collins? Will she transition into someone who's listening, like Dylan Mulvaney transitioned into a girl? Or will she stand fast and remain Kaitlan Collins?
You support launching an impeachment inquiry into President Biden?
Well, it's hard to say at this point. I think there's a difference between an impeachment vote and an inquiry. The inquiry would give us another tool in the toolbox specifically to look at Joe Biden's bank records. Everyone's screaming about the evidence. Where's the evidence? The bank records hold all of the evidence. And if the American people, Kaitlan, if you could see the suspicious activity reports that I have seen on the Biden family, you would probably support an impeachment inquiry just as a tool to get more information on specifically the bank information, bank records of Joe Biden and his family members. That's an important tool in our toolbox.
So does that mean you do support an
I'll
impeachment
support
inquiry?
an impeachment inquiry. Impeachment vote is totally separate, but an inquiry I would support at this juncture.
And why would you support that? Because you're on one of the committees that is investigating this. There's 3 committees investigating all of this, and there's a special counsel that is investigating Hunter Biden, has been investigating him for 5 years now. So why does there need to be an impeachment inquiry if there's already several ongoing investigations?
Yeah, great question. My understanding is it will give us access to Joe Biden's bank records. And if we can connect the dots and show the American people where the bribery allegations stand, where the money laundering stands, showing through vis-a-vis the bank records, that is a way to do that. If you could see what I have seen, then we can't share the SARS reports because they're confidential and that would be against the law. So we have to prove it via other means, via the bank records, for example. If that gets us Joe Biden's bank records, then I'm going to support it because everyone should know what actually happened, what kind of businesses were involved, how Joe Biden was involved, the kind of money that was involved in these schemes is astounding. You would be shocked. You would blush, Kaitlan, if you'd seen what I had seen.
You've said this before, and we spoke with you after you went to the Treasury Department and looked at those reports. But you, as a member of Congress, do have access to those reports. You went and saw them yourself. So I think a lot of people ask, you've been home for 6 weeks. There's been no new evidence that's been uncovered or brought forward.
She's giving you evidence. She's telling you what it is, and you keep saying no evidence. You don't care. Just say you don't care, Kaitlan. That's the whole point. Don't act like you care. The hook is that you don't care, no matter what the evidence is. So no matter what Nancy Mace tells you here, you pretend there's no evidence. That's what you just keep saying. And by the way, this interview took place before the thing with Maggie Haberman where they just sat around and said there's no evidence. What about on The View? Hell, even on The View, they think that there's plenty of evidence that Joe Biden's up to no good. They pretend there's not, but then Sonny Hostin blows the whole thing up.
Theater. People are going to be shocked. I completely agree with that. I think that there has been some
more.
Shocking, right?
More though.
I think that there has been some impropriety. I think that there are instances where Hunter Biden, in an attempt to show access to the vice presidency, the vice president's office, made phone calls to daddy. Those have been taped. I think we have the situation with his work in Ukraine. We have the situation with his work in China. There's no way that political influence wasn't a part of that. I don't like nepotism across the board. I mean, what's good for the goose is good for the gander. And so I understand that there is some real concern there. But what is upsetting to me is that Kevin McCarthy and the Republican, this right-wing Republican Party, is trivializing what impeachment is. High crimes and misdemeanors. Our former twice impeached, disgraced former president.
Accused of,
talking to President Zelensky of Ukraine and trying to do a quid pro quo and trade information for arms when his country was about to go into war with Russia. Don't you think that's pretty significant?
Now, after they did all of this where they, watched Sonny Hostin tell the truth and then complained about what Donald Trump did, somebody made them read a little bit of a legal note. Now, they're good at these on The View. They have to read legal notes and tell people what's going on and why they said the accurate things they said. They have to make excuses for it. So here's that.
But you have a legal note.
Oh, thank you. The White House has called the inquiry, quote, extreme politics at its worst, and said despite months of investigating, Republicans have found, quote, no evidence of wrongdoing. Hunter Biden has denied he did anything wrong by engaging in foreign work in Ukraine and China.
I thought it was 4 or 5 years.
It'll be all up to them to prove their case.
Right.
But right now, we're proving our case because we're taking a break.
But you're not actually pleading your case or making your case, Whoopi. You're just reading White House propaganda that came through a legal note from your employer. Okay, be honest about what you're doing, and we can have a conversation. Now, as for the media and their handling of this, it's embarrassing. Of course it is. But a lot of stuff they've done with this has been embarrassing. I mean, just with the Biden situation, there's the laptop. First, it didn't exist. Then it was Russian misinformation. Then other people might have put something on it. All of that turned out to be false. But the media was so sure that it was fake, even though they knew it wasn't, that they banned it from social media and refused to cover it. The Biden folks didn't use their office. Oh, wait, they did. The Biden folks used the family business, which is government, to make themselves rich. Media tells us no way that happened. No way, no way. And now, of course, oh yeah, it did. But let's look at other stuff outside the Bidens. How about COVID-19, the origin? How about masks and vaccine? How about Ukraine? Oh wait, sorry, that involves the Bidens as well. What about the Russia hoax? What about January 6th? All these things the media told us, here's the narrative. And the narrative never was borne out. But they insisted that was the narrative. And out of all of this, nobody is still asking what I think is the best question here. Who is the big guy? Just tell me who the big guy is, and we can start the conversation from there. If the big guy is Joe Biden and he gets 50% or whatever, he already gets 50% of Hunter's business, so he gets a percentage. I guess it's 10% for the big guy. The big guy's in on this. Who's the big guy? Is it somebody else? Is Hunter Biden the big guy? Is Tony Bobulinski the big guy? Is Devin Archer the big guy? No. We all know Joe Biden's the big guy. And until the media admits that part, they can continue to say, there's no evidence, there's no evidence. But there's evidence of a cover-up here, and that's all the evidence you should need.